So now I go to actually a different clip. This is Heather MacDonald of the Manhattan Institute. We've had Heather MacDonald on before, and I've got to tell you, Heather MacDonald is just absolutely brilliant writer and a very serious researcher. I may not always agree with her. I think we've had disagreements one way or another. I think it was toward the Bush policies regarding terrorism, but we never really got into the defining of that. So I just want you to know I may not always agree with anybody, but quite frankly, I respect Heather MacDonald because of the work she's done on crime, on guns, on the foundational issue that is at the foundation of problems that we see domestically. You think there's a foundation to these things? Yeah, it's economic problem, Crane. It's economic policy, taxation. Yeah, it's a symptom. Yeah, it's a part of it. It's not the foundation. What's the foundation? Culture. Oh, there you go again, Dan Quayle. There you go again. It's family values. You're right, it is. And just as Chris Matthews mocked Mitt Romney earlier on for mentioning the fact that Russia is not our friend, just as Sarah Palin was mocked on dealing with foreign policy there, but people mock. They oftentimes do, and you say it's family values, and then you say, what are family values? Because if you talk about family values, sooner or later somebody's going to call you insensitive because you have the audacity to point out that a family works best when there is a mother and a father, and there are differences between the genders. Really? Captain Obvious is here. Yeah, but he's not allowed in Hollywood. So recognizing those things, and as Christians, we recognize that is God's design. Marriage. Again, living biblically. You can't really go wrong. I say that not from judgment, but pointing out and recognizing I'm fallen, as always, but to recognize the truth. And I want you to hear the truth, because there are those out there when you talk about these issues who just want you to react emotionally to a false charge. And that's why I just love this clip. Actually, it's two clips. And Heather MacDonald talking about My Brother's Keepers initiative by President Obama. I'm only going to focus in on what Heather MacDonald has to say about what's truly wrong and how to truly solve it. And all the government programs in the world aren't really going to change this fact. And she makes that clear. But if you attack that's an attack on statism. That's an attack on bad daddy government. Bad daddy government, who is a terrible daddy, who has no concept of life and wants to make you dependent on them, however well-intentioned. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I bring you Heather MacDonald speaking to just that. And that would be, pardon me, do I have that queued up? Yeah, cut number 10. Roll it.
Well, I think there was a revolutionary initiative waiting to get out of this speech, George, that never quite made it. The two most important moments were President Obama's moving declaration of the overwhelming sense of responsibility he would have for his son, if he had one, to keep him out of trouble and give him the sense of compassion and respect for others that he would need to succeed. And the other important point was President Obama's observation that nothing keeps a young man out of trouble like a father who takes an active role in his life. And that should have been the theme. How do we rebuild the family and make sure that more children are raised by their fathers? Because the data is clear. Children who grow up in fatherless homes are 5 times as likely to commit crime or be poor, 9 times as likely to drop out, and 20 times as likely to end up in prison. How do I know this? President Obama said so in 2008 when he was running for the presidency. There's no more important gap than the fatherlessness gap. And it affects all Americans, but it's especially acute for young men of color, and that's what we should be worried about.
Well, that's one of the things we should be worried about for sure. As a dad and as somebody who's, my father was in the home, it made a tremendous difference for me. I think, though, it's important that we hold these young people to high standards, and we hold the adults to even higher standards. It's very hard to climb a ladder out of poverty that doesn't have any rungs on it, and we've got to begin to put those rungs of opportunity back up for these kids. And listen, everybody else who got in trouble in America, Wall Street got in trouble, we were there for Wall Street. The auto industry got in trouble, we were there for the auto industry. You got a whole generation of young kids who are clearly in trouble. I'm so proud the president finally stepped forward.
Okay, now, did that make sense to you? Cedra, did that make any sense, that kind of response from Van Jones? That made no sense to me. But we need more money. Oh, I get it! They need more money from corporations. Sorry. We were looking at personal responsibility and daddies stepping up. Incidentally, when there's comments about people being raised by single mothers, that is the toughest job in the world. If anything, it's a criticism of the father not being a man and stepping up and being a dad. Now, we are commanded to love our wives as Christ loved the church. There's really no excuse for fathers and husbands being head of the family. God's design, it is a reason. Now, he is our father, all of our father. But this is the message. That's what, now, she didn't speak biblically here, but she is citing a simple reality of personal accountability. If there's one message, not focusing in on minority per se or targeting these groups with more state programs. No. Simply one message. Daddy, be a daddy. Do your job because the state is a terrible daddy. You have a responsibility. Be, I'm going to say this, pardon me, a ripping man. And by the way, for those ladies in the audience, just don't ever discount yourself. Don't ever discount yourself. Don't think you're not worth the very best. Holy Spirit just told me to say that, so I'm saying it. Because you are. And it also speaks to living biblically. Don't say that pointing down in judgment. I say that as just a reality and how awesome it is because there are consequences in the sense of the fact that behaviors, well, soul ties and all that. I'll get Part 2, Van Jones picking up on the conversation again with Heather MacDonald. What route does he take? Check this out. Roll it.
I'll say one more thing. I do think, I agree with what you're saying about fatherhood, but sometimes my fear is that people will say, well, it's just up to the dads. Dads got to do more. But when you have this many kids in trouble, we all have to do more, and it shouldn't be either or. We got to be able to do both.
There's not a chance that we're going to say that. I mean, nobody's been saying that. That's the problem. We have been doing programs as we should with compassion and concern for 3 decades. They haven't made much difference because nobody's willing to talk about fathers and say they are not an optional appendage to children. There's wonderful single mothers there who are trying to do the best by their kids, but kids need their fathers. And until we can rebuild the family,
it's a false argument.
Let's talk about it. Obama could have started a discussion about fathers. It is the issue. There's nothing more important.
It's one of many issues.
73% of all black children are born to single mothers compared to 29% of white kids.
These statistics
she's talking about,
these statistics she's talking about are heartbreaking for every African American. You think that you need anybody to tell us how terrible this is? We work on it every day, but we also need corporate America to step up. We need the president to speak out. We need more things than just dads doing better.
Well, let's have corporate Americans talk about fathers.
Last word.
Julius Wilson framed this decades ago. When work disappears, marriage declines. And as long as we have communities where there are no job opportunities, where the education systems are failing, you will not have any.
All right, go ahead and kill the clip. All right, we're going to have the full clip for you next hour. at the end of the show because you got to hear it. But you just heard substantive. I'm posting the clip now. Daddies be daddies solves a good deal of everything. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, AFR Talk.